Welcome to the finale of the Purple Rock Survivor podcast for this season. We are talking Worlds Apart. We've just completed the finale, and it was perhaps the most shocking conclusion you could have ever hoped to see. Am I right, Andy?
Can you believe it? One guy won all those challenges in a row. He won 3 in the night. Who could have predicted such a thing? Who?
If only there were podcasters that had been telling you this for at least a month now?
That's right. You ignore the fact that we basically picked the wrong person to go home almost every week. We nailed this one, which I think proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that we are great at figuring out obvious things.
We can read the massively sized writing on the wall.
Yeah, and I think what's nice for you, the listener, is we don't play coy about it. I think everybody knew this, but everybody's like, oh, I gotta pretend. Like, what are they, watching pro wrestling and trying to keep kayfabe? Like, it was obvious what was happening, and, you know.
Gordon Holmes, the well-known Survivor blogger, interviewer, all those things, tweeted something last night during the episode like, well, I'm rooting for Mike in second chances, or I know who I'm rooting for in second chances, right after Mike was on screen, and I'm like, are you talking about Joe? Because it clearly can't be Mike.
Yeah, no, I would love to be on here patting my back about having nailed this, but it's a struggle to think of something that's been this obvious. I mean, maybe it's not that far back. Maybe Tyson was this obvious, but at least with Tyson, there were people in that final episode. It's like, that's a person who could win. You're like, They're not gonna. But, like, Sierra could win. Tina could win.
I think the closest would be Caramoan.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Once Andrea went home, it's like, okay, well, it's Cochran. And anything else we're talking about is a waste of intellectual effort. And it was the same thing here, because not only was Mike dominant in the edit throughout the entire time, nobody else was made to look even a little good.
Right, same with Caramoan. It's like, Dawn was clearly a good player, but just based on the edit, it was very clear who they were telling you was going to win.
Yeah, so, yay, Mike. But, I mean, honestly, legitimately, yay, Mike. I think there's been, for some people, a bit of a muted thing. And part of that is because it was just so obvious. And who wants to cheer for the inevitable? You and I do, because we are fans of overdog basketball teams for the most part. Not right now, but in general. Yeah. So we're okay with that. But no, like, really, I think Mike is a very good winner. Let's assess Mike's win, because I think it's a little bit hard to, place historically.
I don't really like trying to rank winners, just because I feel like somehow, if this is possible, it's actually more subjective than ranking seasons. Just because you don't know what was happening behind the scenes, you get the narrative arc that they laid out for you, and then you're just sort of speculating, and it's too convoluted.
Oh yeah, and again, this is probably also the true of seasons, but you apply your own standards of what a good win or not. So I'm not necessarily like, where does he rank amongst the winners? It's more like, how do we judge this? How do we judge what he did? Because on the one hand, winning 5 of 6 when you basically have to win every week, that's pretty impressive. That's a thing that we've been basically saying for a long time now. Just doesn't happen anymore. And it happened.
What? Are you suggesting that a claim that we made was refuted in some way?
I can't believe it. And unlike some people, I enjoy when the show will prove us wrong from time to time. But on the other hand, it's like, how good is he if he needed to win 5 of 6? But then, if on the third hand, because I'm a mutant...
Clearly.
That's been true of a lot of people. There's been a lot of good players that at a certain point, their strength becomes a weakness, and they need to win out, and none of them do it. He did.
Yeah, people were like, oh, he just won immunity challenges. Well, yeah, but that's exactly what he had to do. He didn't really have other options. I mean, he can try to make deals, and he did make deals with Carolyn and Sierra and say, I got this. This will be our alliance. But it's total paper alliance, because as soon as anything goes wrong and Mike loses immunity, they're like, I know what I agreed to, but you need to get gone. So, I mean, what else do you expect him to do if he's going to try to win Survivor? He has to win those immunities, and he did.
Yeah, and also, like, we haven't wanted to do a lot of this season, and I think we've been justified, but I will give a little bit of credit to these losers he's been competing with. they were right. You know, like lesser players than them would have been like, you know what? Yeah, let's team up with Mike, or I like Mike better, or I'm angry at this person I was aligned to. As much flaws as these people had, and they had a lot, they knew that it's like, doesn't matter. Mike has to go.
Yeah, to their credit, I mean, even for some of them being the goats that they were, they realized, like, no. Not going to the end with Captain America here.
Yeah, and you could say, like, well, duh, but there's been plenty of seasons where there's been plenty of duh, right?
Yep.
I don't know how you fault or praise Mike, because it's like, well, a better player would have had the bonds and that, you know, they wouldn't have been a target. But then as soon as you get that better player in other seasons, whether it be, you know, Tyson, Blood versus Water, Ross and Rob, Redemption Island, everybody's just like, oh, I played with a bunch of idiots and never voted him out.
Right.
These people were idiots, but they weren't that kind of idiot, right? They knew that I don't care what happens, Mike goes as soon as we can get him gone. And sure, they built themselves little hate narratives and stuff, like he's such a bad guy. That's just the sort of thing you need to do to keep your eyes on the prize. And I think even if he did a great job, even if he had never had his massive error that we can get to, or we can get to right now, his biggest mistake was the auction thing.
Yep, agreed.
I think that makes it like one day harder for him. Like it was going to happen at a certain point. All the people there were going to look around and it's like, we got to get Mike gone. The only difference, I think, was either, for one, he had to start warning just a little bit earlier, and he did, so bravo. And two, they were just a little more hostile about it. The other way would have been like when they voted out Joe. Joe's a great guy. Joe. You know, like, so
right.
I don't know how much on balance it really changed things. And in fact, you could argue, and I think Jeff did a bit in the reunion, he had the clarity of it. You know, he never had to pretend anything but, I have to win.
Right. Like you said, there was, at that time, it was Mike, Shireen, and Jen were the clear targets. So you can debate when Mike would have been the one going home, but it's likely just about then. If it wasn't then, it was probably the next episode.
Yeah, like they were talking about it. That wasn't invented. I think, you know, the scene showing Mike listening in, that might have been an invention. But Mike, prior to auction, was talking to his people that these people were after him. That chronology has never been disputed in the show. Rodney was talking about going after him right then, which, to Rodney's credit, he should have been. Now, Tyler, to his discredit, was like, no, pause. But at a certain point, he was always going to have to win out. It just turned out that he had to start a little bit earlier.
He did, though, have one signature move, and that would be his idle play fake out, when he suggested that he was going to play it for Shireen, just to see where the votes would go. And it worked. It still somehow didn't convince Dan back to his side, because Dan would continue believing that he wasn't at the bottom of that alliance. But good move. The right move.
Yeah, I think, like, within that period where he had to win out, I think he did he did the things you would need to do to try and get cracks to form and all that. It just wasn't going to happen. And there you could blame the auction that maybe the bad feelings ensured that, for instance, a player like Dan was never going to flip, because I don't know if you've heard of this, but Dan was actually very concerned about playing the hero. So
what? Doesn't sound like the Dan I know.
If Mike hadn't had that great deep betrayal that led to Dan getting the advantage anyway, he wouldn't have lost Dan. I think we also have some evidence to suggest that having Dan on your side isn't really a plus or a minus.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how much that would have changed for him. But yeah, like, that was a great move to show Dan. I mean, he brought Caroline over. He warned her. Yeah, I'm not going to give him too much credit for her playing her idol. But even after that, even after everybody's, like, attacking her for not telling them about the idol, she's still going to be like, okay, but it's still us four. So it's kind of like, could he have taken the target off of his back ever? No, I don't think so. I think it's obvious.
Yeah, because the tallest blade of grass is always going to be the first one cut by the lawnmower.
Exactly. Oh, actually, a discussion that I wanted to get in on this, the physical stuff, because, you know, we've said that immunity runs like this are next to impossible. I think we've downgraded physicality almost too much. I know we like to say often, and when I say we, I mean literally you and I, that immunity challenges, maybe they don't matter. Yeah, the only two-time winner has never won one. But I think this win by Mike might restore the balance a bit and show that they do matter, or they can matter.
Well, our claim wasn't that they don't matter. It was that one challenge matters, and that is the final immunity challenge. Other than that, you can get by without being good at immunity challenges. And in general, the argument is more about being someone who's in good physical shape doesn't necessarily make you an immunity threat, just because of the nature of the challenges that they generally have.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also say the argument is being good at challenges might not necessarily mean anything to a jury. And people are like, oh, they didn't deserve the win. How would that person ever get any, they never did anything in challenges. It's like, yeah, the jury doesn't care. They don't care. But where being good in challenges really helps is if you need them to move on. And, Mike's an extreme case. He needed 5 out of 6 and an immunity idol. But there's been plenty of other winners who needed to win 2, who needed to win 3. And that's where the physical element, I think, helps in Survivor. If Boston Rob doesn't win those 2, I don't think they bring him to the end. If Tyson doesn't, everybody says they wouldn't have brought it in. JT's another one where they were talking about it. So that's where it helps, and where you look at players like Rob Cesternino and Cirie, they couldn't get themselves there. So I think within the 4 pillars of what you need to be a successful Survivor player, I think physical is still important, but it still might be the least important. One other advantage, though, to being physical is the less often you go to tribal council at the beginning, the less often you get voted out.
This is true. True Dork Times, I think, did a statistical analysis on this, and it's basically that if you are in the majority at the merge, 70-ish% of the time, the winner comes from that group.
Yeah, and just look at this season. Joe might not have had to win 10 in a row if he had numbers coming in.
Yep.
Mike's team did. So, that's where it comes in, and I think that's why people that might be just kind of more inclined to discredit Mike's win a bit, because all he did is win challenges. It's like, well, yeah, if you can do that, that might be the surefire way of succeeding. It's just the freaking hardest way to do it.
Yeah, but just to clarify, if Ozzy did this, he's still a douchebag and he sucks.
It's true, and he was so close to doing it,
I
too.
know.
So I'd say, let's put that at the right pillar is that, physical is important. It's just not as important. And if you're really good in other areas, maybe it's not important at all. Whereas social, I don't think that's true ever. Or almost ever. I guess Fabio did win this game. and the last is strategic. Maybe strategic is the one that people overvalue way too much.
I would say luck is the most undervalued.
Yes, that is true. Luck is easily the most undervalued. And actually, to bring that back to Mike, what would you say was his luckiest moment?
Well, how about the fact that the challenges seemed very suited to his physical abilities?
Yes, until the end, they didn't tack on a lot of incongruent puzzles like they have in other seasons. I'd say here's the luck, and it's lucky for Mike, and it's lucky for us. The night Jen played her idol, they targeted Kelly instead of Mike.
Right.
They probably should have targeted Mike. I think, Kelly, we made the argument, and they did on the show, that she was possibly the hub of all that alliance. Clearly that was not true.
Nope.
There's also the possibility that they were just pissed at Kelly because she had been in a bit of an alliance with them for 2 weeks. Or not 2 weeks, but 2 episodes.
6 days in island time.
Yeah. So that could have been it. And if that doesn't happen, if Kelly just plays it up a little bit better that she's still with them, they all vote Mike, and Mike's gone, and this season was god-awful. One thing, though, that we've heard from exit interviews is that Mike actually did work with those other people that he was voted out, at least formed relationships. He formed relationships with Haley and Joe and stuff. So maybe that isn't complete luck. Maybe they decided, we don't like Kelly because of what she did with him, and Mike is at least kind of talking to us, so maybe he's somebody we could work with down the road, and let's not close that door. So I'm not sure, and that'd be an interesting thing to ask him sometime when he has slept and isn't drunk, like all his exit interviews today. It's just like, why didn't they target you?
Maybe someday we'll get that chance.
Yeah, let's give Mike his credit. And also, be happy. He's a fun guy.
He is. I like Mike. I've said since the beginning. He seems likable, charming in some way.
Now, one thing I don't feel like he really did well, but it's this is where the subjectivity really gets into play, because it's really hard to tell, was that final tribal. What did you think of final tribal?
You know what I noticed right away? No opening statements.
Yeah, and clearly they happened. Probst has actually said on his EW, they happened. He just they usually suck, and I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
And what Probst has said is, like, people just end up repeating their opening statement in their answers to questions anyway.
Their talking points.
Yeah, and it's true. I've always felt like that's one of the lost opportunities for a lot of players. It could be that they recognize that people don't really want to hear too much.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was weird. And what I did feel like is I never really felt like any of them presented a case for themselves.
I think it was fairly choppy editing, so I have a feeling there was a lot that was left on the cutting room floor. It was very rushed. I think they probably realized that they had devoted a lot of episode time to Mike winning challenges, which is the narrative they were building for the season anyway. So it was kind of like, we got to squeeze in this tribal council thing really quickly. And it just cut down those questions to nearly nothing. I mean, Joe didn't technically ask a question. I'm sure he did ask it. It just didn't make air.
Mm-hmm. Jen didn't ask a question.
Yeah, there's a couple people that went up and rambled and or stumped for Mike. And it wasn't very compelling.
Yeah, I thought it was awful pretty much all the way around. And the big one was editing. So it's like, I don't even know how to judge any of their performance, you know? In some ways, it felt like the Final Tribal gave Will the best edit. Not he had the best performance, but they, like, let people talk to him for some reason, you know? As though he mattered. But yeah, it's just like, it didn't seem like anybody was asking questions. Nobody really made a case for themselves. Like, the longest answer Mike got to get is when he talked about how he might suck. And I think a big part of it, and I forgot to put this in our breakdown, but it was that fire making challenge. That probably ate up the time.
Yeah. You know, we were talking about Mike's gameplay. I think that was a good one. That was a good strategic decision because it buys Carolyn's vote if she ends up losing. And I think it helped him. It didn't matter who he ended up going against anyway.
Well, my first thought was like, maybe he did this to entertain that jury, and they like him for it. But because you know, they were all like, "Oh, this is going to be great," and then they realized that, oh, we're going to spend an hour watching people try to start a fire.
Yeah, we got so close to matches, by the way.
I kept calling out for it too. Let's go to matches. Let's go to matches. And it's, Probst has said, who knows if this is true? It's like we were minutes away of going to matches. But I think the other thing that worked out is they looked horrible in front of that jury. You know, even if you're not the person that's inclined to be like, oh, I'm voting for the person with the best survival skills, as most people aren't, their lasting impression of one of the two people is like an hour of wasting their time being sucky at something.
And that's not only that, but an hour of having to sit there and watch them being sucky at something.
Yeah, like, if you went into that, like, cheering, yeah, Rodney, you're gonna win this, or, oh, Carolyn, you got a shot. After a while, I was like, God, can they both just go so I can go?
Yes.
Yeah, my buzz is wearing off because I've been drunk the whole time at Ponderosa.
I believe there might have been someone that looked a little drunk on the episode.
At least at the final tribal. Yeah, so, yeah, you're right. I think it was a good move by Mike, and some people are worried that, oh, we should have just voted out Carolyn.
Yeah.
I think Final Tribal tells us, why are we worried about that, people?
Right. And I do agree with you, though, that I don't think really any of them gave a stellar performance.
Mike did one thing really well.
Tell me.
Apologizing to Dan was like stroking John Robert's ego. It was like the perfect thing to say to get one more vote.
Okay. Yeah. And that's actually what I was going to lead into, is the only two really interesting parts were Dan and Shireen. Dan, because he gave us exactly what you expect out of Dan, which is the over-the-top acting and contrived performance that we've come to know and love. And then, of course, Shireen's speech, which somehow said that we should let it be as it is in nature, with a monkey maybe eating a stingray that ate a fish. Not really sure how that analogy worked like it did with Suhawks, though.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't studied the diets of howler monkeys, but I kind of feel like they're not fishermen. I don't know. I'm not an anthropologist, which is good because anthropologists don't study animals. Oops. Yeah, I think that might have been a bit of a muddled metaphor, or at least in the sense of her trying to connect it to the past. This might be a pointless question, but how did you feel about Shireen's final speech there?
I mean, it was entertaining, which what else can you ask from a jury member? But again, there wasn't much drama to it, just because the way the season was edited, it never felt like any of their votes were necessarily up in the air. I knew that Mike had to at least get a majority, and I felt like it was going to be much larger than that. I figured he would maybe lose one vote.
I felt that until right before. I'm like, oh yeah, well, because part of it is we never calculated Rodney not being there. So then I was like, wait, Rodney's on the jury. He's not voting for Mike. Because Rodney was obviously butthurt about it.
Because Rodney is Rodney.
Yeah, and look, maybe Rodney votes for him if he has, 3 days to recover, but, 1 day? Nah, he's just like... So, yeah, as soon as Rodney went out and all that, I'm like, wait a second. Oh, no, Will's getting a vote.
And you know what's funnier is that I assumed Dan was going to give his vote to Carolyn, and then, I think I tweeted it too, then a few minutes later I realized, oh wait, Carolyn's a woman. Dan's not going to do it.
Well, and that's the thing, when we're like, Dan will never vote for Mike, is because we thought he'd be voting for Rodney. So then I was worried for a second that Will was getting 2 votes. But getting back to Shireen, I think in some ways the show's edit didn't do her any favors in the final tribal, because she was there forever. And I think they all get more time, but it's chopped down. And they gave us the whole Shireen thing, and it's like, if it's just, her reasserting her story, claiming a bit of that, that was a good part. Or if, her howler monkey, all of that was a fun part. But all of it's kind of like, you know what? This moment really isn't about you. Does anybody have a freaking question for these people?
Yeah, and that's what I was saying, is that none of them, or at least if they did have questions, we didn't see it because it didn't matter. So it was just a dud of a final tribal.
Yeah, I mean, this one was particularly bad. I do feel like some of this is part and parcel of what's been going on a lot lately in the jury, because most people already know how they're voting, so they're all like, I'm going to steal it. It's like, come on, form it in the phrase of a question at least. Do your monologuing and then ask something. I still want to hear these people speak, even if you already know who you're going to vote for.
Yeah, it's kind of an open secret. I mean, people who are new to the show might not realize this, but while the jury is hanging out at Ponderosa, they do tend to talk about where the votes are going to go. So it's usually pretty obvious to them before they even go into the final tribal who the votes are going towards. So there's not a lot of mystery.
I agree. And note to future juror members who none of them are listening because they're in a hotel right now. Please just ask a question. I don't care if you know how you're voting. For the television viewer, I want to hear the people speak one more time, because maybe then we could say, oh, Mike gave a great jury performance. Or maybe we could say, hey, wasn't that funny when Will couldn't do anything? Because that's what we've been saying all season.
Right.
But, yeah, last night just felt like there was kind of like, can we just vote, please? So there was a tie for second place, and one of them was the other person that everybody thinks was so great this season. What's the final assessment of Carol?
Well, let's not get hasty and say a lot of people think she was so great. She did play a fairly good game. She deserved to get second place. I'm a little surprised she didn't get at least one more vote to actually claim sole possession of second place. And really that vote should have come from Tyler, who she made the exact right move to get rid of. And then he ends up acting all hurt and, you were disloyal and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, because she needed to be. It was the right move to do that. And I wouldn't have apologized to him. I'd have been like, yeah, I took you out because that was the right thing to do. Otherwise, you probably would have beaten me. Like, why not just say that to him?
Because she wanted his vote. Same reason why Mike apologized to Dan. Here's my take on Carolyn. And some of this is reacting to the reaction, where everybody was worried that, why didn't Mike vote her out at Final Five? Why? Oh, he should have just voted her out and kept Rodney. Maybe she wasn't that good. Maybe, for the longest time, everybody's been trying to assign the strategist, the game player status to her, to Tyler, because, Mike doesn't fit their mold. But if nobody was afraid of her at Final Five and they were afraid of Sierra, that might say something. If she couldn't beat Will in a vote, maybe that says something. Maybe her fatal flaws were apparent to everybody out there.
And you know what else I wonder? This being the season that they addressed the sexism in the reunion, maybe Mike sort of had his finger on the pulse and was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of misogynists here who probably wouldn't throw a vote her way.
Yeah, in the way that Rodney might have been a threat, So he has, the 4 votes locked up. And it doesn't matter between Carolyn and or Rodney. But, there's Dan there. There's Tyler there. Like, are they going to admit that Carolyn's better than them? And if Carolyn was really good at this, maybe she could have swayed the people that were pretending that they were able to be swayed during that final tribal council. But I feel like the read that we've gotten through most of the season maybe it was accurate. Maybe she's a bit of a cold fish with people. And that's a problem. So it's like, and this is kind of ties into what I was saying a bit earlier. Maybe we overrate strategy, because I don't know if strategically there's anything I really judge Carolyn for. And in fact, maybe we can give her a bit of credit. But socially, I just don't feel like she was that strong. She was probably very standoffish with people who were not on her side. She did backstabbed a few people that are on there. She had an alliance with Shireen. She had an alliance with Jen and Haley. I mean, obviously it was one of a convenience offer to swap, but I don't feel like she, after that, was still friends with them.
Yeah, and I would still call her the second best player, at least in the context of who made it deep enough into the game to actually be considered a player.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't think she was the second best player. And I probably did heading into last night. I, thought she had to be the fifth person if it wasn't Mike, and it wasn't going to be Mike because Mike had already won the season. But the fact that she wasn't, the fact that basically once she survived that one vote with her idol, nobody cared to vote her out. Her name didn't even come up. Some people are giving her credit for that. It's like, oh, see, what a great strategist. What a way to she worked her way out of it. It sounds like she didn't do squat. They just didn't care to vote her out because she didn't matter.
Well, Rodney and Will tried to vote her out.
Oh, right, because it wasn't them.
Right.
Yes. Yes, because she was a great threat of not being them. So it's like, if she wasn't a threat at Final Five, what does that say about her? Nobody seemed to be that afraid to go up against Carolyn at Final Jury.
This is true, but again, consider the people who were making that decision.
One of them was Mike.
Well, one of them was Mike, but two of them were Rodney and Will.
And that brings me to the second best player this season. I kind of think it was Rodney, and I'm not convinced that he wouldn't have beaten her.
Well,
I'm not saying he would have. I'm just saying that there's a chance.
He gets, I would say, Tyler and Dan's vote. Beyond that,
hey, if you believe Jen at the reunion, and I don't, he could have gotten her vote against Mike. Again, I don't believe that for a second, but I'm not necessarily swearing off that he couldn't have gotten it against Carolyn.
It's possible. It at least would have been close. But let's not talk about the darkest timeline much longer than we have to.
But I guess my point is, I actually think Rodney was the second best player this season. I'm not just saying that to be contrarian. The whole time, we never wanted to give him credit for being the fulcrum of this alliance. He was. It clearly wasn't Tyler. They got rid of him the second they could. It wasn't her. They tried to get rid of her the second time they could. He's the one that held Will, Sierra, Dan together. He's the one that brought in Tyler and Carolyn. It was his alliance. It was his moves. Mike could not crack Rodney's alliance. How impossible to believe is that? But it's true. Yeah, at the end of the day, though, he's still Rodney.
Yes.
And that was the fatal flaw of almost all those people. At the end of the day, they were still themselves.
Right. All right, so regardless, you mentioned the reunion where Jen claims that she would have voted for Rodney. Let's talk about the reunion, because there was some other stuff that went down there that's worth discussing.
Yeah, obviously they had trouble with time, as they always do, and the main reason for that is because they spent so much time destroying Dan.
Ooh,
and
so much
that's
time.
Fantastic. That was probably, honestly, I say Rodney was the second best player in story. The second biggest story of this season, and perhaps the first, is how much they hate Dan Foley and how much they could make him show suck. And they did it again!
Well, it was funny because some people were like, oh, Probst was a little overboard. He was almost too mean. Well, I think he was legitimately saying, and he said it at the reunion, like, okay, Dan tried to call us out and say we're doing stuff out of context and we're not editing him correctly and blah, blah, blah. Let's see if Dan's correct. And so he throws out actual boring, raw footage and proves, no, Dan, this story that you've been feeding everybody is incorrect. You are either totally forgetting or, much more implied, you are completely lying about all of this.
Or, the third is that you just don't see the flaws of yourself.
Okay, so that would be the option C, is that Dan is completely delusional and not the least bit self-aware.
Yeah, and I'm taking C every time, and I've been consistent on that the whole season. And yes, I think there has been some, because obviously Probst has so much more power, and that power imbalance does make people feel like, oh, maybe too far. But in some ways, that wasn't even about Dan. That was a shot across the bow to all survivors, past and present, that if you keep blaming the edit, I will end you.
Yes. And I think that was the most effective way to do it. And I think in general, they don't really care if you say like, some stuff was taken out of context, but yeah, I did do some of that stuff. Dan went to an extreme and said like, no, they blatantly changed the edit to make me look bad. They, sculpted a narrative that didn't exist. What Survivor generally does is they take their impression of you and they boil it down to as small of a segment as possible, because they have very short running times for their show. And I think the edit that they gave Dan was like, okay, this is the Dan we saw. Here's the doses that give you a glimpse into what we saw in Nicaragua.
Yeah, and I think they move it around the margins, enhance and detract, depending on your success.
Yes.
But they don't invent things out of whole cloth. And to tie it back to an earlier part of the discussion, this is why Carolyn never felt like a real winner. She should have. If this show was better edited, and it would have been a more satisfying experience if we could have gone into last night with a shred of doubt. She finished second. She was there the whole way.
Yep.
But they never edited her to be a warm, generous person who felt like a winner, because I don't think she was one, and they couldn't create it if they wanted to. And I think it's the same story with Dan. He was made to look extra worse because he's lost, but you did all the things, Dan. It was all there. And frankly, if you've heard anybody talk about Dan from this season, it's usually in the laughed off jovial way that most people who have moved past the situation will do, like, oh, that Dan. But never once did it feel like, oh, that Dan got a raw deal. Unless maybe you're talking to Will. I don't know.
Yeah, the only one that seemed to feel that Dan got a raw deal was Dan, which should tell you something.
Yeah, more. It's like, we saw it in the edit itself. They called BS on him losing his underwear, because everything Dan does has a tinge of BS. So he gave them all the ammunition they needed, and they used it all. Yeah. And I think, and we've said a lot of times in the season, I think they probably went a little extra because he annoyed them too.
Right, and this sort of ties into something. So his exit interview with Rob Cesternino, I almost don't want to encourage you to look for it, but Rob did post a transcript of it on his site. Rob has a website.com. So if you really, really want to subject yourself to it, you can find it there. And in it, the highlight for me is something like, if you read between the lines, it's very clear what Dan is saying. He says, on day 2, he spent the whole day crying because he missed his wife. And so he watched the first episode and he thought, why wouldn't they show that? And to me, and I'm assuming to production staff as well, that so clearly reeks of, I'm trying to write my own narrative. I'm trying to look like a hero. I'm giving you material to paint me as a hero. Make me a hero. And I don't blame them, because if someone was telling me how to tell my own, how to write my own novel, I'd be like, F you. I'm the author here.
Yeah, and also just bad timing, Dan. They're never going to show that in the first few days. They got a lot of shit to talk about in the first few days.
Right.
That doesn't, like, if you won the season, they're not showing it then. Maybe they would have, Franken clipped it for later. Because actually, there was a bonus scene this season of Dan crying in night vision about his wife. Mm-hmm. I didn't link it as a bonus video you need to watch, because why would you?
Right.
So it was out there. And I was like, oh, see, the one thing about Dan is you can say he loves his wife. I'm not sure how much that wins you over or anything, even if it's a love you only read about in stories. It's like, who doesn't love their loved one on Survivor? Everyone.
Right.
That's the Dan Foley experience, but I love that they just put him on blast like that, just because, own it. Don't just be like, oh, CBS done me wrong.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to believe you.
The one thing that I thought was ridiculous was Probst calling him out on his t-shirt. Like, okay.
Yeah, that was overboard.
Yeah,
I think I think that's indicative of Probst being tired of the Dan Foley BS experience as well.
Yeah.
So one thing they did at the reunion, we'll only touch on it a bit, because they do it a lot, and it never works. It didn't work with Dawn and Brenda. It's not going to work here. Forcing apologies at a reunion is so futile.
I really wish they wouldn't bother. And I think I even tweeted to Probst, like, just, can we please skip it? It's so insincere. You're forcing a moment to happen. It's not organic in any way. It's apologize now. It's like when you're disciplining your child. Like, okay, you apologize to her now, go. The person's saying it because you're Jeff Probst and you're telling them to, but it just lacks all sincerity.
Yeah, and I think organic is the right thing, because there's a potential for organic apologies to happen at the reunion show. You just can't set them up, If that person you're talking is like, Jeff, can I have a minute? And then do it, man, it might feel a little bit better. There's still always the undercurrent of, like, why didn't you apologize before now?
Right.
But, maybe it's like Grant and Boston Rob at Redemption Island. Like, Grant just won't talk to that effing guy. So this is, like, literally your first opportunity, if that is even true.
Right.
But clearly that's not what was happening last night.
Right.
Will knew that he's going to get asked. He did that, so prepared his, fun little non-apology. It's like, this is why you should accept an apology. What is it with men this season and totally not knowing how to apologize?
Whew.
And this is the part where my wife is probably holding back a laugh. It's like, yeah, I wonder what it's like to be around a man who doesn't know how to apologize.
Luckily, my wife doesn't listen, so she won't be able to nod along.
It's like, that's not how you do it, folks. You don't set the terms of your apology. You apologize and just accept, whether that person says it or not, that you are sorry and you are ready to deal with the consequences. That's how it works.
But now, let's move on to the most exciting part of the reunion episode. Second chance announcements.
Yeah. Do you feel like, to finish Worlds Apart, do you feel like they got hosed at the reunion by this whole second chance thing?
Yes, and I don't care.
Yeah. For me, I kind of don't, because I feel like they got basically the same number of minutes that any recent cast has gotten. The difference is Survivor just cut out all the stuff from the audience.
Yeah, the BS segments of this time were just second chance announcement instead.
Yeah, like good stuff,
yeah.
Right? So oh no, they didn't talk to Tyler Perry and Boston Rob and a little girl with rice. So yeah, second chances. How did you like how they handled that?
What's funny is, in theory, I mean, when we heard the whole announcement, I'm like, oh, this is going to be amazing, and they're going to announce at the reunion, and it's going to be awesome. And then you're watching it happen, and I mean, obviously, I didn't vote for most of the people that didn't make it. I think there was only 2 or 3 that I voted for that didn't make it. 1 we'll discuss, or 2 we'll discuss really soon. But I did feel a little bit bad when they were like, yeah, so you're not going. Except for when it was Troy or Brad. I was like, no, I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah, Jim. Even Jim, I felt a little bad because, man, it was like you could pause the moment where his heart, broke. Yeah, it was really awkward. But at the same time, I don't know if I can fault it. Because, for one, this is something that we've been excited about for weeks.
Yep.
The idea is like, oh, they should have done it another hour to give these people more time. Again, they would have just given, like, Cochran more time in the audience. And for 2, 3 hours of one show a night is enough for me, thanks.
Exactly.
And yeah, do it live. Like, the whole focus of this is that it was going to be on TV, and then these people were locked down. I think, it was this excitement of the vote, but it was so awkward, and I think it doesn't help that, like, the first person who got no was T-Bird.
Oh.
And it's just like, oh, no, this isn't fun anymore.
She was so enthusiastic, and, like, her campaign, I didn't think of her as, like, this really fondly remembered character from Africa. But when you watched her videos, she was just so gung-ho, and she loved Survivor, and her interviews, she was so positive, and it's like, yeah, give T-Bird a shot. And then it's just the first heartbreak of the second chance announcement was, sorry, T-Bird.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden it's like, I don't want to watch this anymore. At the same time, like, people are like, they should have just announced who's won and not who's that. It's like, is that really a better alternative?
No,
it's
it
like,
doesn't matter.
We don't even mention you on TV if you don't get on there. You're like the Caramone people that didn't get to sit on the stage. It's like, I kind of just feel like this is what it was, and it is tough for the people that didn't get there. But
yeah. Well, let's talk about the triumphs of the second chance announcements, though.
How about our triumph?
Yes, because we almost nailed it.
Our endorsements, which fairly closely mirrored my own predictions, we were 17 out of 20.
Yeah, it's above average.
I think that's really pretty good when you consider that our endorsements didn't necessarily fully align to everybody else on the internet. We were able to pick out a few, like Monica. That was left field one.
I think we've proven that we are pretty good with predicting it around here, Andy.
Hey, who said that Mike was winning? These guys.
So yeah, Monica was actually one of the less exciting announcements, other than the fact that we nailed that one. We got PG back.
Yes, I was. So when Probst did that, it's like one of you. It's like, oh no, not PG. PG isn't gonna make it. So then it was like when it was T-Bird, it's like, oh, it's still PG. It was so conflicting.
And then we got Savage back.
That one again was the other one. It's like I don't think Savage is gonna make it. The whole time I felt because he does not have internet support.
No.
Although you should listen to the interview that we did with him if you haven't already, and plenty of people have. It's great, even though I'm not on it. But yeah, and then when they did the thing where Terry was like, "Oh no, not Savage," and then Savage
makes it in, and I was bracing myself like, "Uh-oh, Probst is gonna have to give him a hug and tell him I'm sorry, buddy." And then Savage makes it in.
Yeah, no, that was great. Overall, yeah, this is great. I don't have any problems with who made it.
Right.
I have some preferences with who didn't, and we'll get into that. But there's nobody there. It's like, really? Come on, that?
Well,
like, okay, so yeah, neither of us are pro Keith or pro Wu.
Right.
But those just felt like, yeah, those are probables, right? Like, those were the tacks. We knew some players like that were going to happen.
Yeah, those are fine as fodder. I don't care. They're not offensive as fodder.
Yeah. What we're getting at, it wasn't Troy Zan, it wasn't Brad Culpepper.
Right.
It wasn't any of the meaningless mid-20 girls. And by mid-20, I mean seasons. Yeah, no, I think it was good. But, man, I and everyone was not ready for Shane not making it.
No, I really wasn't. I mean, what killed it for me is that they set us up because we got, all these early season players are going. It's Varner, it's Kimmy, it's PG, Savage.
Everybody but T-Bird, yeah.
Yeah, everybody but T-Bird. And even Terry. It was like, okay, well, Terry's going, so obviously Shane's going to go too. And then no.
Yeah, and when it was like him and Jeremy, it's like, oh, wow, Jeremy didn't make it. It's like, well, that's okay. I'm not, a huge Jeremy fan. Kind of sucks that it's like almost all whites, but okay. And then, it was Shane. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I was quickly doing the math, and I was like, oh, yeah, it's Spencer and Joe,
Yeah.
Now, here's what I'm like, and I don't think I'm the only person who sleuthed this out. This is just the absolute wrong format for him. No villainous male got fan support, and that's not really that hard to figure out, right?
Right. Some villainous females did, though.
Yeah, but that field was so bad.
That's true.
I want to meet the people that could in a majority cast ballots that doesn't include Cass or something, right? It's like, oh, I really feel great. And you'd have to then feel great about Stephanie Valencia? She's also a villain, right?
And Natalie Tenorelli, and yeah.
Yeah. So that one's a little, it's just like, well, you gotta vote for somebody and they're memorable. But amongst the guys, it's like, yeah, no Brad Culpepper, no Jim Rice, no Troy Zan, no Shane. And even Max, who wasn't villainous, but was kind of edited to look like a dunderhead. Like, nobody who got any level of kind of negative in their edit had a real chance amongst them. It was all kind of more positive editing. And, yeah, that's how elections work, right? Somebody's like, that guy's an entertaining jerk. I'm going to vote for him for president.
So yeah, do you think that they should do this again? Like, should this be a recurring gimmick that they do?
Yes, I do. If it's as successful as they've claimed it to be, I can't imagine why not. I hope they don't just all of a sudden turn around and do it again in 2 years. Like they keep doing with Blood versus Water or Brains versus Brawn versus Beauty. Especially because if it's like the same idea of second chances, it's like, you know what? Another 26 would be pretty thin.
Yeah.
Like at that point, we'd have to start trying to replicate like the tribe you put together.
Tribe sexy.
But, if they really wanted to up the ante, like, we love this voting process, we love the surprise and all of that, you could do like a full all-star legend type thing.
Yeah,
this
so
way.
that's the format that I think it would fit, is if you're going to do that.
Because then they're going to advertise it a lot more on their show. And then you're going to get all the dreaded casuals. Because I don't think casuals influence this vote in any significant way. Obviously, they probably helped Wu and Keith. Or no, Wu and Keith. But in the same way, it's like, I think people are abusing the term casual of late. Like, how would a truly casual Survivor fan even really know they're doing this?
Well, I can tell you because I live with one. At least generally. This season she was not a casual fan, but my wife is generally someone who plays with her phone while Survivor is on. Again, this season she didn't necessarily, but she decided, oh, I'm going to make an account and I'm going to go vote. So she hops on her phone, she makes an account. She's like, okay, I voted for Shireen. Who else is good? Tell me. That's the extent of it.
Yeah, like they had to vote for 10, you know? It couldn't just be Joe Spencer, you know? And they're like, oh, I remember Jeremy. It's like, at some point, you have to be there and like, do I feel this way about Terry Dietz? Or do I feel this way about Shane Powers? Like, and maybe you do that once if you're a casual, because you saw Jeff Probst talk about it, 2 weeks ago and then not last week.
Yep.
But you're not going back every day because you feel strongly about whether Monica Padilla or Stephanie Valencia deserve your 10th vote.
Right.
So, yeah, I think this was heavily influenced by, Survivor fans, people that are passionate about the show. Here's the difference. Not everybody's passionate the way Sucks people are passionate, or Reddit people, or our fans are. Some of them are Facebook Survivor fans.
Yes.
And those people are still into it. They're still online discussing the show. They just discuss it in a very different way than we do. And those are the people that are voting for Keith and Woe.
Yeah, the people who said, bring back Ozzy for a second chance.
Yeah. When does Rupert get his second chance? But, I mean, this process still elected Kelly Wentworth. This process still, elected Andrew Savage. So I think this was a Survivor fan cast, and I think that's cool.
Yeah, and I think when we get to the Legends format, if that is a thing that they're going to do, why not make it a popularity contest? Just put on the people that Survivor fans want to see the most.
Yeah, and open it up to text messaging and, make it like American Idol. Because here's the other thing that, we should be pretty thrilled. Yes, we're all disappointed that Shane didn't make it because he's great TV. It was sad when T-Bird didn't make it. And obviously, we were pulling for Max, although it was pretty clear pretty early on that he had no chance.
But how cool was it that we actually got to influence it in some way?
And also, the types that Probst likes to cast, the ones that the man on that he feels like man on the street like and all that. No, like nobody cared that you put Brad Culpepper out there. Nobody was interested in you stacking the deck with a bunch of anonymous young brunettes, right? Like the stuff that we most hate about Survivor casting didn't happen for the most part. We have 2 Survivor nerds as part of a cast. Yes. When are you getting 2 of them?
And I'm imagining they were probably some of the highest vote getters.
Oh yeah, they might have been the top 2. I mean, obviously, or 2 of 3 because Joe.
Yeah,
it's this is like a season with Spencer and Fishback. In seasons previous, Fishback is an alternate because they can't cast him and Cochran.
Right.
So I think this worked out really well, and moreover, it gave a lot of people a second chance. Now, I don't buy that a lot of those people that didn't make it have a shot again. I think that was Probst feeling really bad in the moment, but it's like, we're probably not picking up the phone anytime, Sabrina.
Yeah, especially if you ended up on the bottom of those polls. They're kind of like, okay, so clearly you don't have much support.
Yeah, and again, there's a few of them where they might have been like, okay, this isn't the right format for you.
Yeah.
Like Shane, for instance, although I do believe this is Shane's last kick at the can. Because, he's been so close for so long. The only way he could come back, I think, at this point, is if, a year from now they do an all-star season, it's like, Shane, you're cast.
Yeah.
We're not doing votes. You're not an alternate or whatever. It's like, come talk to us. You're in, if you want it.
Yeah, and I think that that's the same sort of thing with Max, where if they really want Max back and they just force him in, he could get back in.
Yeah, I think for Max, this might have been a mode of a blessing, because I think his destiny was always to be like an alternate. One thing that helps is that 2 of the people that were probably standing in his way just got on.
Oh, meaning for future seasons, his
comps,
persona?
Yes.
Yeah, so the 2 Survivor nerds ahead of him are now recently used. So yeah, he might have gotten bumped up to the top of that list.
Yeah, provided there isn't any more Survivor nerds being cast in, say, season 32 that's already filmed.
Right.
Quick thought. Do you have a very, very, very early winner?
Oh, man. Actually, my wife asked me this last night, and my just off-the-cuff guesses were Vetus or PG.
Yeah, that's not bad. I think, Vetus has all the different tools. Somebody to actually watch for is Monica, and I don't want to seem like I'm suddenly this big Monica Padilla head. I literally never thought of her until this process started, but it's just that's how things have gone. And if you look just at the median age of the cast, she's somebody who, unless she annoys everybody, I can't imagine getting voted out anytime soon, because she's one of the few athletic females on the show. It's either like skinny Sierra or women in their 40s.
How quickly you forget Beast Mode Kelly Wentworth.
Yeah, well, both Kellys are in there too, but somebody to watch. I think a lot of people assume Joe is doomed. I'm not sure that's true based on this cast.
And no, he's doomed.
Hear me out. Maybe it's preview talk, but there are a lot of alpha, honorable type, non-strategic, wanna compete type guys that he could align with. If he aligns with, like, Savage, Wu, Kelly Wigglesworth, he might be in okay shape. Because we already know that Wu has no problem with, bringing people to the end that will beat him.
I don't know if history is going to repeat itself quite to that degree on this one.
Yes, because he'll be eliminated long before that. But anyway, I'm excited about this. We got an All-Star season. How great is that?
We do, and it's going to be awesome, and I'm greatly looking forward to it. But I'm almost as excited for the off-season where we get a nice little break here finally.
Yeah, so thank you everybody who's been listening to our show this season, and more that has been listening to all and reading all the stuff we put out over the past 2 weeks. It was, a lot of work for us as a hobby, and I hope you enjoyed it. And we're not going to be doing anything for a little bit of a while now. We and I'm sure you need a bit of a Survivor break.
It was quite a slog getting through that. I mean, it was amazing. Don't get me wrong. It was so awesome as a Survivor fan to talk to some of those people, to get those interviews and the podcasts out to you guys was awesome. And the feedback we got was great, but it was pretty exhausting, especially in such a compressed time frame. So
yeah, like shout out to Rob Cesternino for doing like 25 of them.
He is, I think, a machine.
Yeah, and one thing that I didn't consider at the time, when Max was talking about what a great time this is to be a Survivor fan, this couldn't have happened like 2 years ago when Rob had a full-time gig.
Yep.
Because I can assure you, when you have to work your full-time gig and then do these, there's not as much time.
Yeah, I promise you can't get through more than one a night.
Yeah, so we also lucked out that this is now Rob's full-time job. But man, 25. Or no, it was 26. It was 26. Plus, he still did regular stuff.
Poor guy.
Yeah. Poor wife.
Yeah, that too.
And shout out to our wives for putting up with us over the past couple weeks. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to put the kids to bed as much again tonight because I got to talk to somebody I never met before.
Right. And shout out to my wife who probably listened to her first ever Purple Rock podcast when Shireen was on.
Twice, right? She listened to 2.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I mean, the first one was the first time Shireen was on.
And so we will have off-season content, though. This isn't going to be a 4-month break or whatever. But yeah, we're going to take at least a few weeks off. And then we're going to find something to do. So if you have any suggestions or the sort of thing you might want to listen to in the off-season, you can contact us. We're on Twitter. I am at Purple Rock Andy, and John, I guess, is the podcast himself.
I am at Purple Rock Pod.
You can send us emails, purplerockpodcast@gmail.com, and you can see all the content we've been putting out, and we will put out at purplerockpodcast.wordpress.com. If you'd like us to do a rewatch of some seasons, let us know. If you'd like us to try and arrange more interviews, let us know. If you'd like us to do some more crazy ranking things, let us know. Let us know what you might be interested in, and then we will do what we're interested in.
Yes, we will completely ignore your suggestion, and unless it aligns with...
Unless we love it!
Yes. If it aligns with our particular interests, then we'll go for it.
But again, I want to thank everybody that's helped us put this together this season. Our other friends on the show that you can also follow on Twitter, Purple Rock Pod... I screwed it up. Purple Rock Emma, Purple Rock Matt, and Purple Rock Will.
Who registered an account just for that. And also... our graphics guy and occasional writer guy at Silvisual, who helped us a lot this season. We really stepped our game up as far as content we put out this season. We didn't just do the podcast. We put out a whole lot of stuff on the website, which again, I encourage you, just keep checking it out throughout the summer. There's going to be stuff going up there. purplerockpodcast.wordpress.com.
And then thank you to all the listeners. Obviously, we would literally not do this without you because it would feel silly. But also, you're very participatory. That's the only that's a great thing about the Survivor community, is that it's a give and take. So when you leave us comments, when you tweet at us, that's what makes us want to do this more. And that's why we've been able to etch out some little corner in this crazy Survivor webosphere, is that I think we've created a place where there's a community of people to talk, and hopefully that will continue to grow throughout the off season and into next season.
Yeah.
Anything else, John?
That's all. Let's hit the theme music one final time for the season.
That's what it's like when a woman wants a baby.